Thank you, and thanks, Neil, for joining me again to start off another season of TD Wealth.
I am ready to roll. Here we are after the summer.
That's right.
The summer of what?
A lot of things.
Haze, fires.
Absolutely, a lot of things, and a lot of things in the financial markets, I'm sure. So let's start with, give me some of the highlights.
Yeah, it hasn't been super monumental in any stretch, but there's been some things happening. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about oil prices because that's something we haven't really maybe heard a whole bunch about. And a little bit about interest rates. So oil prices, we started the summer June range. It started to work its way down. It eventually touched like the low 60s-ish price, for crude. Now we're back up into that 80 range. So it's kind of bounced its way back up over the summertime here now, which has been really good for oil companies and especially, I guess, the Alberta economy here now. We're starting to see that some oil companies now are actually buying back shares. They're paying down their debts, which is really good for their balance sheets. And we might even see some dividends out of these oil companies in the future here now. So, the oil companies are in a pretty good spot here now, moving into the fall. Interest rates, of course, is the other big highlight from the summer. Last year we had 7 interest rate increases that we talked about ad nauseum here on the segment here. And this year we've already had 3, and a 4th one probably coming here in September now. That's what most economists are saying, is September 6th. We've now got lending rates. A mortgage is 5.5% to 6.5% now for the next 4 or 5 years. So rates are definitely higher than we've seen them in 15, 20 years.
That's summer, and that's a lot to digest there. But it's September now, and I've heard this term seasonality. So can you explain to me what that is?
Yeah, that's another thing that's kind of lagging over at least the stock market, if you want to call it that. September is perceived to be a kind of a rougher month, and statistically it is. Statistically, if you go back on the U.S. stock market to the early 1900s, on average, September is down about 1%. Which, how does that compare against other months in the year? Well, the average of other months across the other 11 months are usually up about 1%. So September is definitely a little bit of a seasonality as we get into kind of the fall season. There's definitely a reason to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in the markets from an investment standpoint, because September does statistically show sometimes some negativity.
Okay. The interest rates that you mentioned, can those be handled with our housing market?
Yeah, I've watched a number of shows and tried to keep up with a number of analysts on this front, and Canada's been pretty resilient. That's kind of the number one word I've heard from a number of economists around the housing market is resiliency. Calgary and Edmonton, prices have been kind of hanging in there really quite well. In Toronto, maybe not so much. They're down a little bit year over year. But the resiliency of the Canadian market, even with these interest rates going up, has been remarkable here over the summertime. And the big thing is in Alberta here is we're getting the interprovincial people moving in from other provinces because, Calgary and Edmonton are still perceived to be a relatively affordable place to live.
And quickly, just one last one for you. Can you just kind of give me a summary of the markets in the U.S.?
Yeah, let's talk about the markets. What I do for a living every day. Over the summer, what's happened? Well, I'd love to say something fantastic happened, but really nothing did. The Canadian stock markets, for the most part, are flat. They're pretty much flat on the year, and by that I mean they really haven't gone up a whole bunch or down a whole bunch in June, July, and August here now. In the U.S., it's been a little bit of a different story. They've got about a 2 to 4% growth happening. The NASDAQ in particular is up about 4%, the tech companies in the U.S. But the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones are up 2 or 3%. So that could very easily change here in September, more positively or obviously more negatively based on history.
Obviously. All right. Thanks very much, Neil.
Very much. Thanks.